So with that, apologize for the configuration here tonight. I'm looking at the controls in Zoom. It says our video is enabled for everyone. Apparently that is not the case. So in the effort of keeping everybody on track tonight and make sure that we get this meeting in and get done what we need to get done, call this meeting to order. I'm John Davey. I'm the chair of the El Dorado Hills Area Planning Advisory Committee. Tonight we have a kind of unique meeting. It's our meeting is typically the second Wednesday of the month. In consideration of this project and what we had expected would be an early meeting for the Planning Commission in May, which would have been the day after our regular scheduled meeting, we wanted to get this meeting done with our subcommittee on the specific project so that we could go ahead and provide our findings to the Planning Commission in advance of their meeting. Subsequently, the Planning Commission did elect to continue their meeting, the public hearing on the Central El Dorado Hills Specific Land Project, and that's continued to June 9th. And that allows a little more time for the public to thoroughly, go through these thousands of pages of documents. So we're grateful for that opportunity, but we did schedule a meeting for tonight. So we're going to go ahead and keep moving on that. So call the meeting to order, and we're going to adopt our meeting agenda. We have a topic. So unless there's some requests from our APAC voting members to modify the agenda, go ahead and press the raise hand button if you want to. I don't see any going up. All right, we're going to jump ahead. Where are we going? Okay. So when we begin our meeting, we have an opportunity for the public to make comments on any matter that is not on our agenda. We really only have one topic tonight. So if you'd like to address something about this, the Central El Dorado Hills Specific Plan, we ask for you to wait until we're into the topic and we're in an area we're going to ask for comments. So with that, if there's anybody who would like to make a public comment on anything that's not on our agenda tonight, go ahead and press the raise hand button on Zoom. And if you're calling in, you can press the *9 button on your telephone. So I'm scrolling through this list. We're at about 40 attendees right now. I don't see any hands going up. So we'll go ahead and move on. As we begin our meetings, the opportunity for us to have some feedback from the District 1 Supervisor, John Heidel, and he typically will advise us things that are going on in the county and giving us an update about what's pertinent for us here in El Dorado Hills. So John, if you'd like to go ahead, and no one will see you, you're invisible, but go ahead and the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, John. I think I'm going to pass on this part since we had the community council meeting just 2 days ago.
Sure.
And the two big items were described there. The minutes are out. People can listen to it. So in the essence of time and allowing the full discussion to happen relative to your subject matter, I'm going to pass. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Well, we appreciate that. We appreciate you being here tonight to hear our meeting and provide any sort of participation that is appropriate. So I'm going to jump ahead real quick. We have one quick update from our last meeting, and we'll take, we have no guest speaker. At our last meeting, we had talked about the request for the on the tentative subdivision map for the Summerbrook project. It's technically in Rescue, it's right up against El Dorado Hills. Essentially, they were looking to have a modification of their conditions of approval, where they would were required from 2007 to provide a signalized intersection on Green Valley Road at the Deer Valley, the Western Deer Valley Green Valley Road intersection. That was heard at the Planning Commission. They did elect to continue that to off calendar. So that gives them an opportunity to do whatever they're going to do in the background, talking with the applicant and getting some of the feedback. I know there is some EIR or some environmental concerns on that. So that's continued. And to remind our members that this is the intersection we're talking about, is Green Valley and Deer Valley, across the entrance from Green Springs Ranch. And the project itself, and that's the intersection, the project itself is right across from Pleasant Grove Middle School, just on the west side of the Silver Springs, the new Silver Springs intersection. And of course, there's the tentative map. So we'll be talking about this again soon, I'm sure. So our meeting tonight, Central El Dorado Hills Specific Plan, subcommittee update. So we're not going to delve into the entire history of this plan. APAC volunteers have been working for the last 2 weeks plus, going through over 4,000 pages of new documentation, or documentation and trying to get a thoughtful review in place. So as we begin this tonight, we're going to go through some elements of what has changed in the plan, not specifically the entire history of the project. We've done this for, well, since 2012, 2015, we've been doing this for a while. So the first thing that was different in this plan, it's updated in terms of that the second circulated draft environmental impact report was started and circulated. I want to say it was in June of last year, May or June of last year. And the thing that they really wanted to focus on that was that the new CEQA standard for vehicle miles traveled, the analysis, the county has a new standard so they're consistent with CEQA instead of level of service, delay times, things like that. The transportation circulation element in CEQA now is a vehicle miles traveled metric. I've sat through those presentations for the Planning Commission that were hours long about how they perform these calculations. It is witchcraft. But the project, in terms of what the county standard is and the analysis that was provided by the consultant, is that it's it's well in compliance with the vehicle miles traveled in terms of environmental for CEQA. County still does have a level of service element in the general plan that projects need to be compliant with, and we'll talk about that a little bit. The other major significance in this plan is that the previous plan had called for a connecting intersection at Park Drive and El Dorado Hills Boulevard, which essentially would go through the Raley's parking lot between La Borgata and Raley's, and would connect to a new extension of Country Club Drive on the old golf course property. The updated plan, it's been that connectivity has been suggested to be replaced with the Country Club Drive circulation connection option, which would be Country Club Drive all the way through to Serrano Parkway. So as we'll jump ahead here and take a peek. Here's the old plan where it was proposed that on this upper photo that they were going to remove those 13 parking stalls behind Raley's that are in black and move them over to this area here in the La Borgata parking lot entirely, and then you'd have this new roadway connection to Park Drive. We had a lot of concerns about that. Most of our traffic and circulation concerns were about that in our initial findings. We couldn't figure out how this would be a workable, functioning intersection with the opening of the Saratoga Way connection to Folsom, which is opposite of Park Drive here on El Dorado Hills Boulevard. The traffic numbers went up rapidly, and they essentially found the county DOT determined that it probably would not going to be compliant in terms of level of service. So they asked the applicant for an alternative. The alternative is this proposed connection where Country Club goes through the middle of the project site on the east side of El Dorado Hills Boulevard and would parallel the highway as it hits the golf course property. It would turn north and connect to Serrano Parkway. And here's a little closer look at it here. It's a few hundred feet from Pinella Way and a few hundred feet away from El Dorado Hills Boulevard. What's proposed with this configuration is that there'll be a traffic signal on the new intersection on Serrano Parkway. The free right turn movement, which is the long lane from northbound El Dorado Hills Boulevard onto Serrano Parkway, would be eliminated. So that'll go away. It'll be a standard intersection, at least as to what's proposed right now. Now, the DOT and county planners always come back and say, well, the roadway will be designed to county standards. So there'll likely be modifications. The intersection itself might have to move east or west on the new intersection. It might have to have some alteration to the existing roadway on Serrano Parkway. So we don't know. This is just what's proposed right now. And I will note that our planning commissioner for District 1, John Regna, had mentioned during the planning commission hearing is that he thought that with the potential for future development at Silver Valley Parkway, that this really becomes a parallel capacity roadway. You're going to have a ton of traffic on this road, and that Serrano Parkway should probably end here at this intersection, and this segment should just be Country Club. That was his observation. None of the other commissioners really seemed to chime in on that. So let's see, we're going to jump, make sure we get the right things. So where the original alignment was here at the bottom of this image on the left. It came along the bottom of the golf course property and went right in between Rayleigh's and La Brigada. And here's a little closer look at it here on the right. So this new one, the plan, obviously it's a different configuration. And, initially our volunteers thought, well, what are the LOS impacts? Obviously they say it's still VMT compliant. They say it's well compliant. Well, when you look at the traffic analysis, you have charts and charts and charts like this. And these are actually two charts of the same intersection. But you have various configurations. You have the existing conditions for an AM peak hour. You have existing conditions for the PM peak hour. And then you'll have the existing plus project conditions when you add the project to it, what the changes. You'll have near term without the project, and you'll have, which is about 5 years out, and you'll have near term plus a project 5 years out. There's a lot of variables for how they do this analysis. And the unfortunate part about this is that as they do the analysis, they'll look at each direction of travel at an intersection. In this case, it's El Dorado Hills Boulevard and Serrano Parkway, and they'll talk about northbound. And then they'll have each movement that's possible in that northbound direction. And they'll have the same, each movement for the southbound, each movement for the eastbound, each movement for the west. And so there's a lot of numbers. There's a lot of detail about demand volume, surge volume. There's a lot to look at, and it's on many pages. So when you look at this, it's hard to get sort of an overall sort of high level view because it's all detail, which is great. But for an average resident to look at this and understand it, it's a challenge. And I'm gonna jump through. We don't need to look at every slide we have here tonight because this is pretty straightforward. This is, existing PM, AM for El Dorado Hills Boulevard, Saratoga Park. So what I found is that I'm going to jump through all these. There's near term plus project. I just found it easier to put it in a chart and look at it like this. So you have, this is the intersection number 10 that they analyzed. It's El Dorado Hills Boulevard, it's Serrano Parkway and Lassen Lanes on the opposite side. And this is what the analysis is with the new intersection for Country Club. You can see right now, like northbound, the current level of service is D plus project, D in the near term, E when you do the near term plus the project. The cumulative, which is it 15 or 20 years out? I can never remember, but it's a D, and cumulative plus the project is a D as well. And that's with some future capital improvement projects happening and some mitigations being applied. So when you look at this is a better way I just found to look at a snapshot of what we're talking about for an intersection. I'm going to sip water here. And my apologies. If I start coughing, I'm recovering from pneumonia this week. So if I need to mute my microphone for a moment, I won't subject you to the coughing. So apologies. So when we look at this, we had concerns about the intersection at Park. We still have concerns about this intersection because essentially, as we jump through this, I'm going to grab this one. Sorry. This is intersection 13, which is Saratoga and Park. And right now you can tell right across the board, that's a problem intersection right now. And it continues to be through the project. 10 to 15 years out, it's still level service E. In our county general plan, level service of E is an intersection or a roadway operating adequately. When it hits level service F is when things are required to be improved or changed or modified. It's not what the general plan calls for some voter approved initiatives, but the general plan calls for mitigation to get it to an acceptable level, which is E, which is still not good, but it doesn't hit that metric. So when we looked at this, it was just easier to look at this. And here again is Saratoga Park and the PM peak. The existing plus the project makes it substantially worse. Level service F southbound and the PM. Just as you look at this, it's an overall kind of high level look at what it is without looking at the specific volume and the movement details. So with that in mind, we looked at it and our concern was, hey, this is the new roadway and it's impacting an existing intersection. And this is a discretionary project, meaning that the county isn't required to approve it. They can just consider it. And there's a development agreement that goes along with this project. Our concern initially is that, well, hey, we're talking about a new intersection. Why can't we get it better than level service E or D? Why can't the development agreement focus on improving that impact to El Dorado Hills? So in the development agreement, this is what it calls for Country Club Drive. Phase 1 begins prior to any building permits south of Serrano Parkway, but that excludes model homes. And then phase 2, which is an extension from inside the project to outside the project, east to Silva Valley Parkway, 180 days after all wetland and regulatory permits are required by the county. County provides construction plans, and after the county and the developer have entered into a credit reimbursement agreement, and after the developers receive credits applicable dollar for dollar equal to the total construction cost of phase 1, which is inside the project. And I think our initial concern when we looked at this is that, hey, this is a road to serve the project. Why is there a reimbursement agreement other than the fact that, we know it's on the CIP that county wants that connectivity, but if that wasn't a project on the CIP, they'd still have to build this roadway so to serve their project. So it also includes construction management fee, permitting costs that the developer incurs. So we had some concerns about that, and we still have concerns about it in this version as well. So they're limited to building 500 building permits with the project, which one includes the workforce housing element of this project, which we'll talk about in a moment. And that won't count against the 500 unit cap. So they could still build out the total multifamily workforce housing, and that won't count against their 500 unit cap. So once the developer has commenced construction of phase 2 of Country Club, the cap is lifted. They can build more than the 500 units. So I don't want to jump ahead on that. I would ask our APAC members if there's anything they want to chime in on with the Country Club configuration. Go ahead and do your raise hand. You're generally unmuted if you're a webinar participant. So who just put their hand up? And that would be John. Richard, please.
Hey, can you hear me? I was having some trouble earlier.
No, we can hear you fine.
Okay, perfect. One question I have, and maybe you can answer for me, John. I've been out of town, so I haven't been reading this the last few days. Is it was not clear to me that the new Country Club Drive extension onto Serrano Parkway is what would be approved if this goes to the Board of Supervisors. I read a line in there that is what the county is saying it prefers, but it also appeared like there was some language that it was still open to being extended through Rayleigh's. And then there was also language that if the developer could not negotiate a purchase of the right-of-way through Rayleigh's, that it would be taken by eminent domain. And then in the staff report, staff emphasized that that would not be for the benefit of a private project, that, they had some language really trying to stay away from the notion that they were using eminent domain for the benefit of Parker. But it seemed to me it was pretty clear it's for the benefit of Parker, because the chances of that happening without this project would be practically zero. So that's just something I wanted to point out. And I think it's important. I want to know if this is approved, what is being approved? Can you tell from the documents at this point?
Well, that's what I during the course of the Planning Commission hearing, I did not ask the question. And of course, when we're making comments at the Planning Commission, it's not a back and forth. They don't answer your questions. You just provide your comments. But that was one of the things I think that we need to incorporate in our public comments, our findings. It's not clear. I'm uncertain if it gives them the option to do either or. It's not really, like you said, the other part of the project is there. They said that this is the new preferred alignment from the county's point of view. And it also did mention the potential for eminent domain to obtain the access through the Rayleigh's and La Barrera parking lot. And they're still talking about, an EVA road to connect to that parking lot as well. So
Right, and I don't know that that would require eminent domain. Okay, well, that was just my, since you and I hadn't talked about that issue specifically, I was wondering if I was just missing something so far because it was confusing to me.
Well, yeah, and I'll be honest. I mean, I've read, I think, all of it, and then started reading it again. And like we had talked, I missed the traffic analysis. And it was in the third segment of the final environmental impact report. But I had read so much, and I read that the initial weekend, that by the time I got 6 or 7 days down the road, I couldn't remember what I read. So it's a lot of material. But no, I think we should incorporate that in our comments to make that determination. So, all right. So if there, I'm going to go to our attendee. Oops, I grabbed the right device here. So I'm going to ask Charlie as a comment. Charlie, if you go ahead and unmute yourself, you should be able to address us.
Can you hear me now?
You sure can.
Okay. So John, does the proposed Costco project get factored into this project as far as traffic?
Planning commissioners did not mention it. I think they went out of their way not to mention it, if I'm remembering correctly. But in the original project, it wasn't a consideration, and now since they acknowledge it, it's an application been submitted. But again, I don't remember seeing that listed in the potential projects. And again, I've read so much, I do not recall. So again, that's a question that will probably be incorporated into our comments, is that, this traffic analysis, does it contemplate that, whether it's Costco or not, it could be just any commercial development at that end. And I know that we asked that question, what would the impact of commercial development in Silver Valley at the highway at the interchange, what would that impact be for the traffic analysis? And I believe the response, we have a very detailed response to most of our traffic questions, was that since it's not part of the project, it wasn't considered. And it wasn't a project at the time that the initial project was submitted. So I don't know that I have a favorable answer there for you, but I would encourage everyone, listen, we're going to submit our comments. I would encourage the public, you're welcome to submit whatever comments you want that you think are appropriate. And I think that's appropriate. But it's a good question. Thank you, Charlie.
Yeah, it's going to be bad.
Yeah. So I do see Joel, I thought your hand just went up. Go ahead if you want to. There you go.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Perfectly.
Yeah. You mentioned in Costco. Costco isn't the only thing that's going in there. The overall project, I think it's EDH 52.
Yes.
Costco may be the elephant, but EDH 52 is the entire room. And it certainly would have an impact on this. That's all.
Without question. And then so I believe we need to ask that question again. It was quasi answered in our original findings from 2019/2020, but things have changed. So we didn't have an adequate amount of time between the time the documents were published on the 15th and by the time the planning commission met on the 28th to go through. Well, we went through them, but I don't know that we could do it in a thoughtful manner. But again, that's something we need to incorporate into our questions and comments and point it out for the decision makers. So are there any more comments about this Country Club Drive alignment, the change? I don't see any hands going up. And I appreciate participation. So we're going to jump ahead. The other element that's changed in the development agreement specifically, and we had a lot of comments about the development agreement. The development agreement wasn't published until 2 days prior to the Planning Commission hearing. And then even during the course of the Planning Commission hearing, other exhibits and documents were being added to Legistar while they were conducting the hearing. So it's very unfortunate. So the development agreement contains a community benefit fee, and it's essentially that with each residential building permit, a community benefit fee, which is established here in this document, the county will use the funds for any purpose benefiting the community as determined in the sole discretion of the Board of Supervisors. It'll be collected upon the building permit issuance for each building in the project. The amount is now $4,124. And again, that's per unit. The 2019 draft agreement had called for a benefit fee that was $6,000. However, this revised community benefit fee also has, I guess you call it the benefit, that it would be tied to a consumer price index, so that it will rise or fall based on, what the CPI is. So if you get 5 years out, that was one of our concerns, is that, that $6,000 was fixed in 2019 dollars. And by the time you get to 2020, 28 or further out, those dollars are worth less, and the cost of everything is higher. So that is a change. That did add that into it. The other thing that they modified with this community benefit fee is that, it's for the first building permit. It's not for any remodels or secondary units later that, somebody might want to add on after they've owned the property. It won't be applied to, and we're going to get to this part of the new change in the project. There's 100 units of deed restricted workforce housing in the Pedrical plan area. So this community benefit fee won't apply to that. And to the multifamily units in the Pedrical plan area, the community benefit fee will only be 50%. It's $2,870 per unit. So significant change. There we go. Sorry. Did I go too far? I probably just went too far. No, I didn't. Okay. So something that was removed from the development agreement was the payment of a property transfer fee. So the developer had proposed, and it was rather unique at the time, that every time the property was sold, it was transferred to a new owner, there would be a 0.25% fee assigned to the property based off the value of the sale. So $400,000 property transfer fee of $1,000 is a result, if you do the math. At the time, that was intended to benefit the applicant had suggested they wanted that to be a benefit for community things in El Dorado Hills, such as Regional Park Bass Lake. They specifically had mentioned the CSD, or the 11-acre limited commercial facility that they have proposed next to the fire station on Wilson. So that's gone away, and in its place, the new 3.25 is the provision for workforce housing. So in the Pedrical site, in the multifamily area, there's 100 units of workforce housing proposed via this development agreement. 50 units will have rents that are affordable to persons or families that earn 80% of the area median income, and the other 50 units will be for persons or families that earn 100% of the area median income. It's going to be enforced for a deed restriction. It has to be, legally configured to satisfy legal requirements via the county. So county council will obviously be working on that. So they will, if this is approved, and this is part of the approved development agreement, construction of workforce housing would be facilitated by trying to get, experienced builders in that build those projects, and try to do it within 3 years after the effective date of the agreement. The other element of this, it's a big part of this, is that if it hasn't started in 3 years, that the county has the opportunity, if it's their reasonable opinion, the right request a dedication of the land to the county, free of the deed restriction. And then if the county asks for that, then they'll pass it to the county, and that will fulfill the developer's agreement in terms of development agreement and workforce housing. Jump ahead here. So the other element of this too is that, so the staff report indicates median household income, for a household in El Dorado County is $87,000. But when you look at the census data from the current census, the average median income in El Dorado Hills is $137,000 for a household, which is significantly different than the $87,000 the staff report cites. So 80% of that for those 50 units would be $110,000 of household income, and 100% obviously $137,000. And then for an individual, the census data shows $57,000 is the area median. So obviously 80% is 45,000. So we'll talk about this a little bit. I want to open it up, but the thing that occurs to me is that, this is something the county is eager to embrace, is workforce housing, not just in terms of what, the state's going to force down municipalities and to counties, local governments, but in terms of being able to maybe facilitate increased development in terms of commerce in the business park or other businesses in El Dorado Hills. My initial look at this was that, it's great. Workforce housing, I think, is something we need to find a solution for, but I typically think you put workforce housing next to work. And I don't know that that exists in this plan area, and I don't really know to what great degree it works in El Dorado Hills. I know that we have a very large business park property, and I know the Chamber of Commerce will tell you that there are a lot of employees out there that could benefit from this. So I'm going to go ahead and first I'll ask for our APAC members if anybody wants to chime in on this that's looked at this. And John, you're up first. John Richard.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I have a couple of comments on this. Going back to the community benefit fee, one concern I had, and I've really harped on this whole, these things should be adjusted for CPI moving forward or adjusted for a housing value index in this area. And that just makes sense because over time, of course, homes increase in value. So in nominal dollars, Parker is increasing its revenues on this project, yet the benefit fees stay the same and inflation eats away at those. So that's kind of the basis of why you want to increase these or index them with inflation. But I was really disappointed to see that the base rate was reduced from 6,000 down to, I forget the exact number, I don't have it in front of me, the 4,700 something.
Yeah.
And then it was eliminated on 10% of the units, which is the workforce housing, which I can understand the logic behind that. Sure. But at the end of the day, what we have to do is look at this and say, in our area, home values have increased 30% or more over just the last 2 years. And yet we are reducing the base rate that Parker would pay as a benefit fee, which makes no sense to me. This project just in the last 2 years has become massively more valuable and profitable for the developer. And if we're saying that there are a lot of costs placed on the community, if this discretionary project is put through, then we should really look at what benefits should accrue to the community. And I think the community benefit fee, wherever it's used in the county, is one of the key areas that at least the county's been looking at. My other gripe is that we're not specifying where that's being spent, and more of it should be directed
pointedly, yes,
El Dorado Hills. But in any event, my main issue just on the big picture of that, without getting into like where it's being spent, is it makes no sense to me that this project has probably become 30% more profitable in the last 2 years, yet the benefit fee has been reduced, even forgetting about the workforce housing thing. So that's one thing that I think people should really pay attention to. The other issue there is when I look at the workforce housing, and just so everyone knows, I have a lot of background in developing affordable housing in San Francisco. So San Francisco and I've done it in Oakland and San Rafael, they typically require for any entitlement to build a project between 15 and 20% affordable. It's just part of the deal. You're not going to get anything built there. And these affordable housing agreements in San Francisco and the rest of the Bay Area are very, very specific about the size of the units that are being created. Are they 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom? And when I say specific, I mean down to the unit count of each size apartment. And that's because developers like to make agreements like this, that they'll build X number of affordable units, and then you build all studios or all 1 bedrooms. And the development agreement here has no provision for that. Parker is free to develop whatever he wants, just 100 units. And that's a very loose standard. The second issue with respect to the workforce housing portion of the development agreement that I had concerns about is that it appears that it's going to be all grouped together in the multifamily section. And I'm not sure, it was unclear to me if there are going to be 2 apartment buildings or 2 apartment developments or 1. I had some sense that there was going to be 2, but I couldn't find right offhand as I'm sitting here, I'm still in the middle of reviewing all of this, is but the concern is then you're putting all these affordable units into one project and creating, in essence, what someone might call a project, which virtually all urban areas in the United States they've moved away from that model of grouping affordable housing together. And the model that is used again throughout the Bay Area that I'm familiar with, and this gets into very, very specific agreements when we sign development agreements in the Bay Area, is that these affordable units are always distributed evenly throughout the project. So that way they can't be pushed back up against facing a hill and be the kind of crappier, cheaper units that you couldn't rent at market rate anyway. And also it disperses the affordable units throughout a project. So everyone's mixing together. No one's feeling like, oh, I'm in the crappy part of this development, And I think if we're going to move this direction toward workforce housing, that section of the development agreement needs to be more than a couple of paragraphs long. I mean, that section, when I've signed them, has been pages and pages of detail of how this is being handled. And it's very, very in depth, and people are taking it seriously. This just struck me as not being taken very seriously. It was kind of looked to me like it was thrown in there at the last minute. And I guess the third point with the workforce housing is if you look at the costs that El Dorado Hills is incurring on this, and the fact that there's no community benefit fee, and that it looks to me like they're all going to be grouped together, which isn't going to be very good for the people living there or the rest of the community, is that we're giving up a lot to get 100 units of workforce housing in that type of very loose, unspecified configuration. It just makes no sense to me.
Yeah.
So that's all I had to say. And I just wanted to point that out because I know a lot of people haven't done a lot of affordable housing, and I have quite a
No,
bit.
and that's why, your experience has been very valuable through this entire review process, both a couple of years ago and again now. So, and I should remind everyone that John is our subcommittee chair on the project. So thank you, John. Mr. Raslier, I see your hand up.
Yes, I want to back up John's statement about how all big cities have moved away from putting this kind of housing together in one area, which actually, to my mind, produces a ghetto. And they have distributed this kind of housing throughout any development that they build. Okay, so John's point is well taken. The second thing I want to mention is even if you had this kind of housing, it seems to me that developers have jumped on this kind of a thing, this workforce housing. If you lived here in El Dorado Hills and you were of a very low income, there's no way you can afford to live here. Where are you going to go shopping? Where are you going to go to your restaurants? We're in a high income area, okay? So all of this workforce housing seems to be, in my estimation, almost kind of a smokescreen to add more housing in a particular area. And that's just my take on it. Thank you, John.
Okay. Brooke has her hand up. We'll go to Brooke, and then we have some questions from our attendees. So Brooke, if you want to go ahead.
Sorry, we're just finishing up a baseball game, but I missed the beginning and wanted to know if you guys had addressed the sections just about the general plan inconsistencies,
We
just
will
on
get
a
to
general
it.
scale.
Yeah, we're going to
Okay.
get to it.
And then I just wanted to confirm one other thing. Is it true that our comments are not due until June 6th, that the meeting was pushed out?
The Planning Commission meeting was continued to June 9th, which is the day after our June APAC meeting. And they will
Okay.
take public comments in person as well.
Okay.
So written in.
'Cause I've done the legal analysis. And I know you guys are going into the details on some of these things, but there's an overall legal defense to the entire proposed amendment. I just didn't have time to write it all out for everybody.
Okay,
But I
well,
can withhold all of that. until we
we'll certainly, as we work
to
again
that
as
part.
our subcommittee, we'll certainly work together to incorporate what we develop. We appreciate your expertise in that as well. So I'm going to jump over. Tara's been waiting for a long time. So Tara, if you go ahead and unmute. Let's see. There you go.
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
We can. Thank you, Tara.
Oh, great, okay.
Perfect.
Hey, I am jumping in this as
If
well.
anybody had looked at that.
I just want to let you know, I haven't read the full 4,000 pages. As you guys know, I've read many thousands of pages of previous projects. And just want to note and thank Brooke and you all. This has been, APAC, just very impressive. And under John, I over the 20 some years that I've watched it evolve, this is really professional, and just thank you. So moving on with what my comment is, yes, I too have a project, as Brooke put it succinctly, a project defense of this project. And I think the board knows very well, it goes back 2 or 3 boards to the original construction of the community dividing out community versus region when that was done. And the board prior, 3 boards ago, stating that, and this is on record, stating that to do this in the general plan, and it's CEQA law, that they have to do individual analysis of each parcel before they put it in a community region. That was never done. There is a legal defense that people don't know. Very few people know. The people like me and John and a couple other folks that really know CEQA law know that this can kill this project. Not going to make me a lot of friends with Parker, I know. And that's not my intent, to kill the project. What I'm saying is there is negotiation power, and there are some cleanup work that still needs to be done way back when the community region was constructed, was reboundaried, and those parcels were never, the work was never done. It was passed on to the next board. That next board didn't do it, got kicked down the road. Hey, it is what it is. So just want to throw that out there. There's so many things I have to say. One, on many of these projects that I've reviewed, fire suppression just was huge on some of these recent ones. Very egregious lack of fire suppression. I won't name names, but one of the recent ones that I reviewed, not going off into tangent, but just to emphasize what we need to be aware of. One project that was approved had fire suppression based on it. I mean, it was so egregious. When I presented it to the planning commission, they didn't even know. They didn't even know what their fire suppression was. And when I told them it's 1 tank on gravity, 1 tank that will supply 2 hours. This was in black and white in the project report, 2 hours of fire suppression. And that project went through. So I would just caution everybody, pay attention to the reports and what they say they're delivering on fire suppression. I have probably 1,000 other comments, but I'm going to leave it at those 2. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And to remind everyone, as we discuss things here, we talk about things that we're going to add into our findings and our comments. Individual APAC members are welcome to provide their own comments as well. The community certainly should provide their own comments. I want to also remind everybody that just saying you don't like a project, or you're accusing a developer of being a villain or somebody else of being a hero, it's irrelevant. You really need to be based on facts and be thoughtful with your comments, because I know that when there's a drum beat and it's entirely emotion, that people tune out, and that's not what we want. We want our decision makers to hear what the community is talking about. So, okay.
And just finally, John, just to put that out there, no, my comments are strictly professional. They're
Oh, yeah.
not. I hope you don't take them as
Oh,
motion.
no.
Mine are strictly to say, let's pay attention to this, let's pay attention to that. I'm not for or against a project. In fact, I've always made that clear. What my role is to put forward the facts and let others make their decision.
Yeah, and you're echoing what APAC's position is. You know, we're not here to advocate for or against. We're advocating for a better project for the community. And right now, you know, our assessment of this has been that it just isn't there, and we couldn't provide support.
Thank you.
So,
And I'd love to get with you, John. You've made some great comments, and I love what you've done, read about the traffic impact circulation. You know, that's my background. Love to get with you on some other time and talk to you about that.
sure,
with-
certainly.
with that.
And I know you have my email, but I know
Okay.
that I would love anybody else in the world to be doing that other than me.
Oh, I
So,
tell you, I hear you.
So we're going to go ahead and try to get through the more of this here. So we discussed.
John, can we just follow up just real quick though? Because I think the points were really valid, especially on the CEQA and the legal analysis. And I don't think it's anti-project. I think that the evaluation that needs to be done is more the analysis that's being done at the planning department, and then by the planning commission. They're setting a precedent that needs to be addressed. So it's not necessarily project specific, but what is happening if this project were approved and the method in which they are seeking to amend and change the general plan and make it inconsistent with itself, but also with the El Dorado Hills specific plan, that will set a precedent for some pretty bad things coming down the pipe for the entire county.
Oh, yeah, no question. No question. I think that, like I said, you know, I mentioned in this that because this has been an emotional project, right? And so a lot of comments as I'm reading them, and believe it or not, I read them, I think, as I hope the planning commissioners do. A lot of them, when they get heated, I know that it tunes people out, whether that's the intent of the message or not. So if you want your message to be delivered and received and considered, you know, be respectful, obviously, but you know, if you're passionate about it, be passionate about it. But you know, they're looking at facts, and it's not about tricking or winning on a point. It's about just being, informative and saying, hey, this is what I'm concerned about. So, and I appreciate everyone's efforts at that too. And hundreds of you have made those comments already, and continue to do so. This project and other projects. So. Let's jump through, and so we can get through more of this here. We're almost an hour in. So in the development agreement, the same as the last time, but it's just another thing that we had a finding on the last time. It's the developer contribution to a pedestrian overcrossing, and they're talking about providing $500,000, up to $500,000 worth of construction drawings, environmental review, state and federal permitting for a pedestrian overcrossing, which I believe the county planning department and the transportation department believe that this proposed pedestrian overcrossing can qualify for a significant amount of grant funding. And I would hope that it would, because the overcrossing that they're building in Rancho Cordova is in excess of $25 million right now to cross Highway 50. It's a little more narrow up here in El Dorado Hills. There you go. So the concerns we had about this, and I'll jump ahead. Oops, I'm on the wrong device. Here we go, on this screen. And this is where they're talking about the pedestrian overcrossing would cross at the, and this isn't final, this is just proposed. It still needs to be designed, but would cross at the edge of the proposed 15-acre park site behind Rayleigh's and everything over there, cross Highway 50 and go into town center. So our initial concerns were, one, this is an expensive project. We know that the Transportation Commission, which is not a county agency, but in the transportation planning, that this is something they've considered and they think would be of value. Obviously, the goal everywhere is to make more walkable communities, make more pedestrian facilities where they make sense. But when we looked at this, our assessment was this is a lot of money. It might not ever happen, and based on grant funding. And it only serves the project. It really is not serving a lot of the rest of the community. And we had questions about, well, do you have easement rights in town center to land this thing over there? Is that going to have to be negotiated later? So while it might be the dollar amount seems significant in terms of the design, it's insignificant in terms of the overall spend. And, you know, we honestly, our initial assessment was, you know, we're entering the last phase of the improvements for the Latrobe and El Dorado Hills interchange. There's another phase of improvements coming. You know, why cannot there be some pedestrian facilities added through there? It seemed to be more achievable and more cost effective. But again, I'll remind everyone, this is El Dorado Hills, and walking, as much as we want walkable communities, it's tough. And at that dollar and at that spend, we just felt that there, you know, if you can get a $25 million grant for someplace else, or even a $10 million grant, there are plenty of other projects that probably would be more deserving to have those dollars spent. I know they're very pointed how they assign them, but and how they award those grants. But that was just our consideration then. It's still part of this project now. We just wanted to make sure we mentioned it again tonight. Let's see, I'm on the wrong, there we go. So this is an odd one. We have a guest here tonight that we're going to ask to chime in. This is new to the development agreement, 3.2.12, an option for El Dorado Hills CSD to relocate their park facilities. So in this project, the developer has proposed 15 acres of park space at the southern end of the golf course along the highway. We have, as our subcommittee has looked at this project, we've always felt that was an inadequate trade in concerns of, you know, 99 acres of recreational facility, and we're ending up with 15 acres of park space, which we need, but we're losing 99 acres overall of recreational facilities. And we're not talking about open space, we're just talking about the potential for recreational facilities. It's an element of the general plan that they deem important enough to include in the general plan, and we're trading it, not getting much back. And it barely meets the Quimby requirements in terms of park space. So our assessment was the park is really going to serve the need of the new development. It's really not an overall benefit for El Dorado Hills. There are some elements that would benefit everyone, but to wit, so developer had proposed in the draft development agreement, and which we didn't see until Tuesday before the Thursday Planning Commission hearing, and there was no supporting documentation. They will refrain from development of approximately 11-acre site located to the immediately south of Station 85 right there on Wilson and El Dorado Hills Boulevard, and for a period of 1 year from and after the effective date of the agreement, to allow the El Dorado Hills CSD time to analyze the feasibility of developing a 9-hole golf course and facilities on this relocation site. So it's an 11-acre site that they're supposed to trade for the 15, and it is a literal trade. If this was something the CSD wanted to pursue, they would get 11 acres, they'd lose the 15. The 15 would have to be amended in the specific plan to become either residential or commercial. So it was a very odd thing, and I'm going to throw this on the screen. Let's see. I don't know really if we want to go through any of this. There's more supporting documentation in the development agreement. So the sense of it is they're an opportunity to trade. So this is a document that was added to Legistar during the course of the Planning Commission meeting. I haven't seen it. I know the CSD might have had a last-minute peek at it, but we'll ask that question here in a minute. So they're talking about the fire stations here on the north side of the project, and then as you look at this, I'd say about half of it is actual parking space, and the rest is the golf course that they had suggested. And then this is a better look at, there's the fire station, El Dorado Hills Boulevard, what a conceptual look at what it might be. And then the last element of what they added to the documents was the same thing with the limited commercial 11 acres on the north side of the fire station. So with that, I know that Kevin Lowen, the general manager from the CSD, I asked him if he'd be available to comment to us tonight to get a sense of where the CSD is at, specifically in terms of this mention that was added to development agreement, and then anything else that the CSD wanted to share with us tonight. So Kevin, if you're available, go ahead and unmute, and we're grateful to have you here tonight.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm here. If you can hear me, it might be easier to kind of tee up the questions you want. I'm also willing to share screen because I know we made reference during the Planning Commission comments on Thursday. I made reference to, and then followed up with sending off to the Planning Commissioners the most recent, I believe the most recent letter to county administration and staff specific to the development agreement. And that was That was a work product of an open session item during a board meeting. I want to say back in October, November, because I think the item I have dated is November that I can show to you guys. It doesn't matter. I mean,
Yeah.
I'll show it to you, show you what we have.
If you'd like to, I'm gonna go ahead and stop share that I'm doing. If you wanna, you should have the opportunity as a webinar participant to share your screen. Let me know if it does not work for you.
Yeah, just give me a moment to make sure I got a lot of stuff on my screen.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. One or two things floating around.
Yeah, let me get rid of a few of those. That way I'm not showcasing things I probably shouldn't. There we go. Okay, and then were there any specific questions? Oh my gosh, sorry.
No, that's okay. I don't answer the phone all the time. No, I think the question is that obviously the community really didn't have any advanced knowledge of this. I don't know how much feedback the CSD was able to provide in terms of this, but is this something that's feasible? I know that the discussion at the planning commission meeting was sort of aligned with what we had said, that, you know, more total park space, contiguous park space would be maybe a benefit, that maybe we could get to a place where it would be an adequate benefit for the community, that the developer could have their project, the community could benefit by more park space and preserving more of the recreational space. That would have to be, you know, I think our desire was that it would be one space as opposed to a small space over here and a bigger space over there, let alone less space overall. So
Right.
I'll let you go into it.
Yeah, definitely commented on that. We of course wanted or would like to preserve the entire open space recreation facility of the old executive golf course for the community. And you heard me comment on how we've pursued that and we'll continue to pursue it. However, knowing that we don't control the development agreement process or have the land use authority, we don't have that sort of local control. It's spread out across, you know, the county as far as county supervisors. We had to look at what could we actually get, since we were told there's no way. I mean, they don't have a project if you take away the 98, you know, the 100 acres for ease of talking about it, the old golf course. I said, okay, well, you know, talking with the board members over the years and different board members, we've had changes in the board makeup. You really kind of have what we have here. And you can see we went down, I don't know if you can see what I'm highlighting on there at all, but 35 or more acres. But you also see here, we want an amount to effectuate a contiguous park and recreation facility. So just what you said, something sizable, enough size to do something. If preserving it just as open space, fine. But if we wanted to do something with it, it needs to be large enough to do that something. And to put it into perspective for people, community park is 39.5 acres. Promontory Park is like just shy of 19 acres, just to give you an idea of what we have done with some acreage sizes. So anyways, we needed to get something to them because we were put on notice that the development agreement process was getting back underway. One of the big areas up here is the parkland dedication agreement. And what I was referring to last Thursday is, I mean, we've been in this situation too many times before where the community, the CSD is left to try to figure out a deal after the deal has been struck. Doesn't put the community or the community service district in a good position if entitlements have already been given. So it doesn't really work that way. You got to work out these details in advance. At least that's beyond my recommendation. I mean, that's a best practice. It just doesn't make sense to try to figure it out later. But in worst case scenario, then it needs to be done prior to final mapping, right? Or what I have here, tentative map. So yes, should be done now. Worst case scenario, give it to us before it gets mapped, because then at least we still can work out a deal. Parkland dedication, you see that of 35 acres. Utilities, not a major comment there, but this is, we bake some of these items in here because we've learned some lessons with prior lands that we've obtained from in the Serrano plan. I mean, I don't need to dance around it. The Parker Development, Serrano project, pretty much all the parklands we've gotten from them have reversionary clauses that if we stop doing certain things on it, we have to give it back to them. And or it's zoned not quite for the uses that we would be doing: park, recreation, facilities, open space. So like the golf course has a reversion, not the golf course, the archery range has a reversionary clause on it. Village Green, I think you guys might know this, the park that we own isn't really the piece that looks like a park. We own the pond, so the body of water that costs a lot of money, and the frontage along the sidewalk, and then the walkway, and then up where the playground is. But the big lawn out there with the big old oak tree grove, Parker Development still owns. So up to the edge of the water, they own the nice big lawn. We own what we call the barbell kind of park system. Anyways, it's not all bad. It's just we have found that we want to be free and clear to do park and recreation type things. Of course, within all the requirements of the county, whatever reviews, environmental or otherwise, county subdivision ordinance and all the other ordinances. Anyway, so we want it free and clear reversionary clauses. Phase one, that's just basic when we take on any land. Park development fees, park impact fees, of course, applicable to the project. That's something that's going to help build whatever it is that we would build to offset the new impact of new residents coming in. And then for ongoing maintenance, instead of forming another LLAD, we've moved away from that in the last couple of years and formed CFD 2019-01, with Saratoga Development being the first to be in that, and it is active, it's activated. So we're asking that all new projects go into this master CFD for all future facilities of the district. It does help spread the share of public park facilities across the new subdivisions coming in. And of course, forming a backup CFD for maintenance for those areas that would otherwise be owned or managed by the HOA or the developer. We've had this in place, but we would call for a LLAD typically. So like even Serrano has a backup shell LLAD. If they were to fail, the CSD could activate it. It's not a requirement to activate it. Hawkview has one. We have a handful of other ones too. Okay. This one, it gets a little denser here, I think, on this. Should the developer provide land or other facilities and appurtenances for or related to any senior services, regardless of the CSD's planned or agreed to provision of such services, those facilities shall be conditioned to be part of the aforementioned CFD. So basically, we were put on notice that a senior center, dubbed as the Senior Center for the Ages, was being worked on conceptually with the developer. Somehow the county was involved in the conversation, but the developer was driving it more so. And then in more recent times, since November, we heard that the fire department might be participating in it. So my comments last week were tied really to this. If you're going to do this thing that you really haven't worked out a deal with us on, the ones who do senior recreation services, please make sure you include it in the maintenance funding mechanism that I talked about in the bullet point earlier, the maintenance CFD. That way, if something changes, if the CSD does get involved in it, then there is a maintenance funding mechanism to make sure it's done well and done right, and not left to dig around in the cushions looking for funds to do it. We were also looking for a community benefit, part of the community benefit fee or a community benefit fee to go towards construction. You heard my comment last week. There's no money set aside anywhere in this project to build this thing that they talk about. So I don't know where the money was going to come from to build it. And that's, I probably called it pie in the sky, or maybe that was the overcrossing. If the money's not there to build it, I don't know. It's been being talked about for about 5 years. You'd think you'd hear about a pot of funds if it was gaining traction. And I'm not trying to say we don't need a better senior services facility. It's just that location it has certain constraints to it that we didn't find conducive for the future of senior services put on by the CSD. We were looking at a more singular facility, a community center, not pushing our seniors off to a separate location. On the flip side, we'd love to own the facility that we're in. That way our seniors know they have a place on an ongoing basis. They know it's ours and we'll do it because we do. Anyhow, we try to put some triggers in here. If it's not built within 10 years, those community benefit funds, those $2,000 per unit, would go towards a project somewhere in nearby to the subdivision that's going to that would be approved if this were to go forward, and you know, as close as we could. So we were trying to think ahead, not knowing what was going on with this senior center idea, since we were not. I mean, we were tipped off to it and it was kind of talked about, but nobody really sat down with us and said, here's the plan and here's where we need you. Then there's this other community benefit fee for park and recreation trails. We have heard over and over again, trails are number one when we do surveys with the community, trails and connectivity, pathways. And for every year that I've been, not every year, but ever since I've been with the district, CSD, from past planning, DOT directors even at the county, they've come to us and said, hey, the trails in El Dorado Hills, would you, the CSD, be willing to take on the ongoing maintenance of them? Now, I'm not saying every single trail, but the trails disconnected from the roadway, it's harder for them, the county, to maintain them. And I get that. And I said, well, you're asking us to take on an additional liability and burden to the residents. What do what can you do to make it trade on this? You know, what can we do to not just take on a new financial liability or burden? Well, that really wasn't the first question. The first question was, I need you to map it and quantify how much trails and how much do you spend on it. I don't know that we actually have a final on that, but we've gotten close information. So what I was trying to do was bake in an endowment for ongoing maintenance of these trails in El Dorado Hills. Looking forward to the future, if trails are that important, which we know they are, let's start putting some money towards it and take care of this maintenance issue that we've heard that the county has. So I was trying to help them out and our community, but if they've got an issue, well, let's try to work on that. General community benefit fee right here, just to go to community benefit. We're trying to kind of designate and dedicate that towards El Dorado Hills. And we do put here, we would like it to be utilized for a short course golf facility or community center or aquatic facility. We just weren't sure given where this was going to go. But we put them kind of in a prioritized order, even though we don't exactly specify that. Let's see here. Everything that the developer's got to do should be their cost burden. You know, if we have to work with them on something, I see that baked into a lot of local agencies when they have to work with project applicants. And then there's the other stuff. And this is just one letter on development agreement. We've sent plenty of other letters related to the overall project. So developer cooperate with the CSD for CC&R development. That's common across most subdivisions. Really, it's an agreement, a formation of a covenant with the developer with the future subdivision, and the subdivision has the covenant. The CSD is not a member of that covenant. We just have an administrative authority if the HOA is not otherwise doing it. The HOA has first right, first dibs, however you want to do it. They have the authority. Should they relinquish it by action or should they relinquish it by dissolution, then that could transfer over to the CSD. And I'm making that a clear point because there's been some chatter out there on social media and emails to me about CC&Rs and CSD stepping in. It's a covenant between the HOA membership and the covenant of its members to address that issue. Refuse collection, you know, the CSD is the solid waste authority for El Dorado Hills area. Cable television, same as the solid waste. We really want them, we've learned this lesson. We want to make it very clear that the developer or the builders make it very, very clear that parks have park-like activities, which is clear in the county's ordinances. But these disclosures need to be, I mean, I don't know how much more clear, but it's very, very clear that there's park-like things that happen at parks. So make sure it's beyond just buyer beware, make it very clear to them. Should the senior center become part of the plan development, CSD would take care of those as we typically do at the Gilmore Senior Center. Trail plans and connections, we want to be a part of those because we want to make sure it does tie into existing connections or planned connections. We don't have a whole lot of planned ones in that area, but if we had the open space golf course, we'd be able to tie into some other planned paths. And then of course, oak tree mitigation. We really would like to see that clarified, not just a 1-for-1, a DBH requirement. So that was the letter sent back in November. Hopefully I didn't eat up too much of your time, John.
No. Oh, we did want to hear what the concerns were, and since the development agreement was so late and we're not privy to those discussions, I think it's a benefit for the community to understand what the CSD's concerns are in terms of benefits for the community if this project becomes reality. I mean, my one question, and I'll open it up here, and we don't want to take all your time tonight, but my one question is that is 11 acres, if that is a consideration, is that enough for what the district would want to see in terms of a short course? I mean, is that
No,
realistic?
no.
Okay, yeah, because I had looked at
yeah.
Bradshaw Ranch, which I played a ton driving back and forth commuting. It's been open since the 90s, and I want to say I can't remember, but it's significantly larger. And I play that course with a pitching wedge and a putter.
So that 11-acre graphical representation of a short golf course to the south of the fire station was shared with me a few months ago, and I kept it in confidence. I shared it with my board members visually, that one.
Yeah.
But I did not share the document with them out of the confidence that was, we were asked, don't share this. We don't want it getting out there because it's, who knows what this is. This could just be another drawing that someone put together. We know where it came. It came from Parker Development. We looked at it, we said, and we considered it, and we even batted around the idea, well, what if we had that and the 11 acres of the CLC land, CCL you have on the map there? I said, well, could we put the driving range over there? And this, well, we'd be shooting balls either up the hill or towards the archery range. And I said, well, balls, arrows, things flying through the air, just kind of kidding around. But we looked at it and said, that's really not that conducive. And then I did have a meeting with county administration and Kirk Bone. And I did not have development agreement draft or terms in front of me. I saw them, just as I said last week, the week prior, they were shared by the county auditor to me, I think 2 Mondays ago. Maybe 3 if we're counting all the Mondays. Anyhow. What I communicated at that meeting with county admin and Kirk was, that 11-acre depiction just doesn't work for my board. It doesn't work for the agency. It doesn't work for a short golf course there. What about something more intermixed between the homes on maybe the south side of Serrano Parkway? And, just kind of batting around ideas because we weren't really rolling up our sleeves and negotiating those kind of details. A little bit more loose conversation. But then in following up that meeting, which I believe was the same day as the groundbreaking for the fire department's new training facility, I followed up county admin saying, hey, I actually think that straddling both sides of Serrano Parkway might be more conducive. We can get enough acreage possibly. You can still they can pack in their homes however they need to. They can move some pieces around. The road can go wherever it's going to go. You have the golf cart underpassing of Serrano Parkway. There's still a lot of details to work out, but it's kind of like mud on the wall. And sorry, long way around, 11 acres, not enough. Trying to add in the CLC land just didn't seem all that conducive. It is disjointed still. And then trying to put it on the 15 acres up by the highway, that still wasn't enough. So we were really shooting for still 30, 35 acres. at a minimum to do the short course thing.
I think that our recommendation, when we submitted our findings, we had suggested 40 as a starting point, but that's fine. I appreciate that you're available to us to provide sort of this information. I know that John Reslier has his hand up, and I know you're eager to hear from John Reslier. So, John, would you please go ahead and post your question?
I want to, first of all, I want to thank Kevin because he's brought up quite a few items that we should look into in regard to this piece of land. I don't see how a golf course of this size sitting on El Dorado Hills Boulevard would be a benefit for all of the residents in El Dorado Hills. Something that was mentioned before, an aquatic center, maybe a community center, or just leave it open, okay? And I think Kevin has brought up quite a few issues about why this particular golf course is, in a lot of ways, it does not serve the community. I do want to talk about, just briefly also, about bike and pedestrian. The people in DOT seem to believe that we have enough of bike and pedestrian paths in El Dorado County, but the fact is that the ones that we have are not connected. You wind up in the middle of nowhere. How El Dorado Hills Boulevard outside of town center has no sidewalk is mind-boggling to me. And why anyone would think about, if I'm walking on El Dorado Hills Boulevard, I would go through the business park to get across 50, when you should have something that goes right across or under Highway 50. And I've been advocating that for a number of years. So I do want to thank Kevin for bringing up those items. And I think that this kind of a golf course on that small amount of land doesn't serve anyone. Thank you, John.
All right. Hey, thanks, John. John Richard has his hand up, and then we have an attendee in the audience wants to ask a question. So, John, go ahead.
Hey there. I just want to say a couple of things. One is, as Kevin, those were just fantastic comments. I think those are issues that APAC's really going to be looking at closely. And so I appreciate you bringing those up, and I hope the community listening to it really looks at that, because these land dedication issues are a significant part of what is viewed as the benefit to the local community, to El Dorado Hills community, as opposed to El Dorado County in general. But what I really wanted to touch on is these reversionary clauses. You know, I read those, and I think they're troubling because they say basically we're dedicating this land, but you have to start building certain projects within a specific time, and if you don't, then the land goes back to the developer. And I find that troubling for a whole bunch of reasons, not the least of which the first question to my mind is, why does the developer want the land back? You know, what is that future use, that future unknown use? And so, and I think there's a real possibility some of this land would revert back to the developer, because we all know we have budgetary constraints on starting these projects, and we can run out of time, even though the intention is to eventually develop these parcels for the community benefit. And one last thing I would say is on that property adjacent to the firehouse, you know, the development agreement has some conflicting language in it. It says the fire department can use it, I think, as a communication center, or it can be used as a senior center. And then further in the development agreement, further on, it says if it's not developed as a community, as a senior center within a certain time period, it'll revert back to the developer. And I don't think that that's intentional, that they kind of said, gee, you could use it for fire department use or senior center use, and then later saying, but if it's not senior center, it reverts back to us. But the point is that these reversionary clauses are pretty tricky. And you know, I think it would be nicer if we're getting land dedicated for community benefit, that it's just simply dedicated, free and clear. So that's all.
And I'll just add on to that, just to labor this some more. One of the elements is that, you know, if the overall density of the project doesn't result in 1,000 units as proposed, that you know, the Quimby requirement could be reduced as well in terms of the overall park space and parkland dedication. So I found that troubling.
Yeah, can I jump in on that Quimby requirement too?
Yeah, go right ahead, and then we're gonna
The
go
Quimby
to,
requirement, that is the minimum bar by law. And I really don't even think that should be, obviously, to your point, that's the way the development agreement is now, that the park sizes could be reduced because we're using the Quimby requirement in the development agreement as the minimum bar. But really, this is a discretionary project. And so to me, when you have discretionary projects, we shouldn't be talking about minimums. We should be talking about maximums and what can benefit the community.
precisely. Okay, Charlie has had his hand up, and I'm gonna ask Charlie to go ahead. Let's see, I think you are unmuted. Go ahead, Charlie.
Yeah, real quick. I'll disagree wholeheartedly with John as far as the value of the golf course. It's the new up and coming thing, these short golf's under attack for 5-hour rounds and 6-hour rounds, and these 9-hole short course gets all kinds of people back out on the golf course, and we need active parks in El Dorado Hills. We don't need any inactive little play structures, little parcels here and little parcels there. We need some activity. So you got the pool, you got the archery range. If you had a golf course, it just makes our community that much more complete and that much better. But I will agree with him on the connectivity. That is before Congress now, and all the funding that comes out of transportation bills for the last 5 years and going forward all have huge focuses on pedestrian and bike and connectivity. So we've got to bake that into this project as well. And I had to step away, so I didn't hear the part on an overpass over 50. Is that part of?
Yeah, it's still conceptual. The developer would apply up to $500,000 in design and sort of preparation of the proposed overpass, pedestrian overpass, and in the event the county would pursue grant funding to accomplish it. And that's an expensive project, was our initial
Very
concern.
but very I would say very necessary. We're going to add 1,000 new front doors, and you're going to try and get cars to go through the intersection of El Dorado Hills Boulevard into town center. It's just going to make it a madhouse. So if you build it, they will come. People will ride a bike or walk over the freeway and get into town center. And you couldn't ask for anything better if we have to ask for stuff. Those are the things.
All right. Well, thank you, Charlie. Hillary has had her hand up. Could you go ahead and there you go. I think you're ready, Hillary.
Yes, thank you. When I read this in the development agreement, I couldn't believe my eyes that if CSD chooses this option or a parcel anywhere, whatever you end up with, then the developer gets to choose to put commercial on the 15-acre parcel by the freeway. Now, all that was announced was that they were seeking rezoning from open space recreational to residential. And all of a sudden, I find out in this tiny paragraph on page 18, that it could revert whatever you choose from CSD to, they could build more homes on that spot. So maybe we're going over 1,000 homes. If they choose to put more homes on that spot close to Highway 50, so we could have more than 1,000, or in my mind, the developer gets to choose to put commercial on it. So I just don't get why a commercial is even in there when the rezoning request was to go to residential. And I agree that this putting course doesn't seem to benefit all of El Dorado Hills. When we want some open space and like you said, maybe a community center or the aquatic center, but it just seems like a carrot so that more homes or commercial can be built on the 15 acres. So I don't understand that part. So could somebody tell me why the developer would get to choose the commercial on there?
Well, I don't know that we can answer that in any sort of informed manner tonight, but I know that in the draft development agreement, if the CSD were to exercise that option to swap parcels, essentially, that it would have to entail a subsequent specific plan amendment. So this plan would be approved and then it would be amended to move the CSD, golf facility, as they call it, the golf project, to that new parcel. And then, yes, they would ask to have the ability to do commercial or additional residential there, which is not considered in this plan, but it would have to be analyzed as a specific plan amendment.
That seems very strange to me that he would have the option to put commercial on there when I don't think people realize, yeah, you look at this and it looks great, and people, oh yeah, we'll take that, and that open space on the, 50. I don't think they realize it's such a big trade-off in terms of there could be some commercial buildings on that, with potentially a lot more traffic and all of that. But it doesn't seem right that that's just done through a specific plan. And then that's why I'm just, anyway. And also with the development agreement, they keep referring to exhibits, specifically exhibits 1 through 13. I have combed everything that's posted, and I see exhibit A, B, the alphabet,
Yeah.
but where are those exhibits that we can look at?
This specific exhibit that we're looking at right now did not exist when the development agreement was posted as they were discussing it, and it was added in the middle of the hearing. So that's one of the questions I have, is that, how the numbering of the exhibits and how they're added, it's inconsistent. It's hard for the community to actually have.
They're not posted, right? Those exhibits
or they're included inside of another document as an exhibit. So
I've looked, I don't see anywhere where there's,
it's only a few thousand pages. So
yeah, I haven't come up with, I searched, where you search every document and exhibit 1 or exhibit 5 or whatever, and I couldn't come up with it, and I spent a lot of time trying to do that. So
well, you know what, we got about a half hour left, or 25 minutes, sorry. I want to thank Kevin for participating tonight, providing that insight from the CSD. I believe, Kevin, that your board meeting is next week, your regular board, and then you have a special meeting about this project at the CSD, and I believe is it May 19th? Is that what I read?
Yeah. Oh, I can't share. I was going to show the little screenshot. I was going to show you 2 things if you were really curious to see 2 more fun things.
Let me stop this one, and then you can go ahead and do it. And then we got a few more things to get to, but I appreciate anything that you want to share.
Okay, let me see if I can do it here with some sort of ease. Sorry. Not as adept at this as you are. So yes, we are 2 Thursdays doing that. We basically, like, maybe a different kind of forum. The board wants to hear from residents. What sort of message do they need to formalize in a letter from the Community Services District to send off to the county, since we heard again at the commission? Tell us what you want. Tell us what you want. I said, okay, well, we'll tell you again. And then, hold on a sec. Let me see if I can share. I guess this was just a quick markup of the development agreement, since we only had it a few days, just like the rest of you. So of course, the FIA, we were concerned it was outdated. Especially just all the financial impacts going forward. So using that as a basis is problematic. Their designation of community park, I spoke to that last week, totally outside of their right to do that. That's for the park district with the authority to do that. And 15.3 acres is unlikely. We don't think that's actually the case. Part of that's because we've never actually been able to go on site to go even measure and look at it. Let's see here. Not a big, that they wanted to apply CC&Rs to the parkland. I said that we've been in that situation before with Village Green, where whenever we want to make a change there, they want us to go in front of the HOA, but then the HOA won't hear us or review our items because we're not actual members. So it's kind kind of a catch-22. And not a whole lot. These were just some handwritten notes I passed along to some county staff. Doesn't look like I have the whole set here. I felt like I wrote some other interesting notes. Let's see here. Community benefit fee, no money dedicated, and then the CPI was good. That's actually something we told them about the last time they did the development agreement. Parkland dedication agreement in advance. This 1 acre neighborhood park that they keep saying is public parkland, it's actually going to be used for an HOA. That's not public parkland, that's their HOA facility. Yeah, you see me getting a little scribble crazy here. This is problematic. You mentioned this, John, that we won't figure out how much parkland's owed to us until they start mapping this and actually delivering homes. A little bit of a chicken and egg issue. How do we plan out what park we're going to do and start dedicating funds and working out plans? It's really problematic not knowing what you're getting into. So basically just dedicate what you're going to dedicate. Let's get the deal going, whatever that deal is. CFD, I'm not sure why the Civic Limited Commercial is under the heading of Parkland. 3.2.6 is Parkland, 3.27. It's not in excess of any parkland. It's not parkland. Oh, sorry, there's my Kevin notes. Without an agreement, this is wasted ink. And quasi-public. What is that? I asked them to define that term in their definitions in advance of the meeting. You really need to define what quasi-public is. What are you eking or sneaking in here? What are you really trying to do with this piece of land that you're calling quasi-public? And of course, reverting to the developer is problematic. And no, we don't want an LLAD. We want the district-wide CFD. Fiscal impact analysis needs to be updated now. And senior center needs to be in the CFD. And of course, another silly poison pill. The 11 acres is not enough. That's just it's just none. So anyways, those were the main notes. Okay, John.
All right, well, I appreciate it again. And I remind everyone that if you have the opportunity, CSC is hosting that meeting. If you want to provide more impact and more information and feedback to the CSD, do attend that meeting and participate. So
can I just say one thing real quick, John?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Go right ahead.
Kevin, you were going through the agreement, but did you highlight section 2.5? They vest the entire sole discretion of a project revision to the director of planning in the building department in his or her opinion, meaning there would be no opportunity for public comment.
Yes, okay. So you saw a handwritten markup. I actually have a much more extensive track markup.
Okay.
Where I wasn't going to showcase that one. We still had to leave a few shells in the to fire off. And that was a big one that I noted as well. They've left all those revisions for the planning director on a go forward basis.
In his sole discretion.
Yeah,
I just wanted to make sure you saw that. So
yeah, that one's pretty bad.
Yeah.
We've seen how that's worked in the past with past development agreements. And
well,
you can
it's in conflict with the parks. What is it? The park 9E, what is that? Oh no, that's the developer agreement. But what's the provision of the general plan? Sorry, I'll give it to you. The Parks and Recreation, section 9 of the general plan, it's inconsistent with that. It's inconsistent with the specific El Dorado Hills specific plan. And a developer agreement cannot be inconsistent with any 3 of those elements. So I just wanted to highlight if you had seen that.
Yes, I did.
You can't transfer the discretionary review beyond what is appropriate in the operative general plan and specific plan.
Yes, actually, I'm scanning now. So section 2. Which one were you referring to?
2.5.
2.5. Yeah, I've got it here. Yeah, my note. If the director handles the approval, then how would anyone be notified of the change? And then how would it be appealed? Because it speaks to an appeal as well, but no one would actually be notified because it's almost not even ministerial. It's just done It's just done at their desk.
As written, it's an unenforceable,
Yeah.
it actually would be a void provision.
Yeah, if I needed to show you, I love that you saw that too. This is good. Lots of people looking at it.
We have a couple more questions. I'm going to go, Rich has had his hand up, and I'm going to ask Rich to go ahead and unmute. And then I'll just remind everybody, we're running low on time. So if you have some good comments, let's get to them. And I want to make sure everyone has an opportunity.
Hey, John, this is Rich. Can you hear me?
Yeah, perfectly.
Great, great. Thanks very much. Kevin, really appreciate that presentation you did. I live in the very southern tip of Village D1, would be in favor of that kind of chip and putt concept. I think it serves a dual purpose. Not only does it preserve open space, but it makes that open space active, independent of a trail by, providing a golf course type facility. My only concern on that would be is that I would probably relocate that parking closer to the boulevard, and that is to move balls away from the boulevard, but also a little bit of a fear relative to grass fire. That being somebody decides to play around a golf there, head out to the parking lot and decides to have a smoke and drops their cigarette on that dry grass, and it goes right up that hill. I'm not sure if you were aware or not, but last summer we actually did have a very small grass fire over on Serrano Parkway, right at the entrance to the Village D2 gate. Certainly it's helpful to have the fire station very close nearby, but still it's a threat. And so just my comments in that regard. And then Kevin, the other question for you, I'm going to be out of town on the 19th. Is there a way I can direct comments to the CSD in writing in advance?
Absolutely. Always. You can submit them to the clerk of the board or even to myself, and we'll make sure to get them to the board. We really want to make it a little more collaborative of a meeting where we're taking a lot of input and finding out what does the community want. So it won't be, I don't think it'll be constrained to like 3-minute comments. It's going to be a little bit more. Let's find out what the community really wants out of this.
Okay, thanks very much.
Great, thanks. Tara, you have your hand up. Go ahead and, oops, I think I hit the ask to unmute. There you go.
Oh, did you say me?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't mean to have my hand up. Sorry.
Oh, hey, well, it was good talking to you.
Put it down.
That's okay.
Thank you, everyone. These are really good comments, though. I'm really glad. I'm really impressed by everybody's reading these now. And boy, for years, I felt like the Lone Ranger out there reading this, and just my eyes would glaze over at some of the things that,
well, it still happens that way. Trust me. Yeah.
I know, but it's really helpful that more input is given, because then you get more responsible planning that way. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Charlie, your hand's up again. Do you want to jump in? Okay, well, I'm going to jump ahead then as we get. Thanks again, Kevin. And we're going to go ahead and move on to the balance of our discussion tonight. We're not going to go through the detail on this. I just want to let everybody know that our subcommittee chair, John Richard, in a very short time frame, provided some very pointed comments on his own that he did share with our APAC subcommittee members. But John's letter was very precise, and he had a couple points in here that were, I think, sort of key. John, did you want to touch on any of these right now? We'll share this letter. It's in the public comments, so we'll share it again on the APAC website as well. You had, I think, five points. So.
Yeah, rather than just going into detail, if it's on the APAC website, we don't need to take the time here. Okay. It's pretty brief, so if people go to it, I think it would be great. I tried to give the high-level overview without getting into details, and then I'll get into more details in the actual APAC comments. Or if they're too pointed, I'll just write a separate thing on my own later.
Well, and again, we appreciate that you submitted the comment on your own, but that it was pointedly from the perspective of the work we've been doing, reviewing it. And again, we submitted a formal letter from APAC, essentially mirroring some of your comments. Just not enough time, and we still have some of the same concerns. So I'll jump through this. Again, we'll talk about the inconsistency of the general plan. It's still what it is. We think it's not consistent.
Actually, I just wanted to jump in. Sorry, I don't want to take too much time on this issue, but the whole, I wanted to bring up the general plan consistency, and my letter points this out, but when staff replied to that in the current staff report, there was a huge addition to the staff report that addressed general plan consistency, and then it also went on to address other comments made by the community. And to be very specific, staff says basically the goals stated in the general plan are not relevant to their analysis of consistency, which I just find not very tolerable, because the goals are the overriding vision of the general plan. And so then what the staff report said was, we're going to focus on policies and see if we're consistent with policies. Well, policies in the general plan are simply stated policies that are consistent with the goals of the general plan, but they aren't the only policies that can be used or implemented to achieve the goals. And so at the end of the day, if we eliminate the goals, if we say, hey, the goals of the general plan don't matter, which is essentially what the staff report says, it kind of begs the question of, why do we have goals in the general plan? We might as well just delete them if we're not going to pay attention to them. So I just wanted to point that out, because for me, that's a huge issue.
John, can I comment to that? Because that's the research that I jumped in and did.
Yeah.
The reason why they're going in that direction is because the application is fatally flawed. And it's really sad to see the planning department, and they're practicing law and they're not attorneys, and they're citing to cases in the staff memo, and every single citation that they used is inaccurate. It's not what the case stands for. And when you're doing that, that's typically, you're doing that because you're trying to hide the ball. But when you turn to what they got hit with in 1988 with the general plan amendments, they tried to do something very similar, where they tried to say, when we amend the land use map, that's not something that we need to focus on. We're going to focus instead on how our specific plan meets and is consistent with our general plan, and we're going to make all these conclusory statements and no findings. And that's exactly what they're doing here. And really, on its face, it's appealable. And this is where, if you don't want the project to go forward, it needs to be in the public record, because it hands down, the project blows up. It does. Legally, there is no legal foundation for doing what they're doing. It's actually something that the Sacramento Superior Court has said, you cannot do this, El Dorado County, and you need to stop it.
Right. And that's my read on it as well. I'm not an attorney, but
I want to say that was there were elements of that in my initial response too, but John's letter was so comprehensive, considering it was so focused and so, urgent to get this in. I appreciate that we got that in.
Yeah, the one part though that needs to go into it, and is actually the stronger argument, is the comparison to the El Dorado Hills specific plan. That is part of the general plan, and there is absolutely no analysis, but a brief little blurb about it in the staff memo. But their whole table of compliance and consistency does not even focus on the fact that they are 1,000% inconsistent with a specific plan that states that El Dorado Hills is a golf course community. It literally puts it in there, like you cannot remove the golf course. And then the other open space, it says that the open space, which is highlighted, which they want to take a part of that and move it into the central specific plan, that is open space in perpetuity. They legally cannot do it. It runs with the land. They cannot convert that into any kind of residential development, and they cannot manipulate or change the zoning on it.
And so we will be providing those comments in addition to our other comments in our formal public comment to both the Planning Commission and to the Board of Supervisors.
Yeah.
And so
I didn't know if, John, you had gone into that, because I don't want to do duplicative work. It's a lot of work.
No, in fact, we were going to look
and I
for
should
you
talk
to do it.
offline about this, and coordinate on that. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've briefed everything. I apologize with having COVID last week. I didn't have time to write everything out.
He said that
All us respiratory folks this week. I'm going to jump ahead then. John's comments are pretty pointed right here. We talked about the Country Club Drive intersection. And then the fact there was no development agreement the week that we had to review this. So I just wanted to mention something that sort of is consistent with what John had mentioned. We had mentioned the infill consideration in our initial response to 2019, 2020. And that, oops, I can hear someone Someone's live on
Does
a
give you
mic.
visibility too.
I
When
can't see
people
where it is.
have complaints that things are overregulated.
Okay, well, I'm gonna go ahead.
I only
and-
see Hillary. I think your mute is not on.
So
There you
Sounds
go.
like Kevin. Kevin, is your mic on?
when I was reading through this before, there,
It's
Okay.
not me talking.
Okay, well, I'm just gonna jump in and note, because now everybody's paying attention to me. Meanwhile, back to me. So, infill development. The applicants consistently call this an infill plan. Staff reports have always called this an infill plan. Infill. So the general plan specifically states, and I'm looking here, project sites may not be more than 5 acres in site for an infill project.
These people.
But the general plan policy is that the county shall implement a program to promote the infill development. There is no policy. They have not developed it. But the staff report comes back and says, well, you know, it does say 5 acres in size, but since there's no policy, that this project wouldn't be able to participate in that future program.
Apparently you were able to at some point.
Here we go. I found one there. That's it. Okay. So we pointed this out in our comments, and the comments from the staff report that came back said, well, really, that's not a concern. So as we move forward, looking at this again, it does say later in their staff report, the definition of infill, you know, our concern, 5 acres. The county is, the general plan has established the county will develop a program to promote the infill development, but it doesn't set forth a county definition of infill, even though it says 5 acres in the element of the general plan. So they've considered that because, you know, of where this is located, there's additional development around it, that it qualifies as an infill project, even though they're saying it isn't an infill project. So it is and it isn't. And it doesn't apply and it does apply. So putting them side by side, it's equal to or not equal to. It's yes, but no. So that's frustrating as a community as we go to look at this. It says specifically 5 acres. And then they say, well, really, that's not any sort of metric, even though it's listed in the general plan element that infill development is 5 acres, because they haven't developed the program. To which I would also say, the general plan is from 2004. And technically it was before that. We just approved it in 2004. We've had about 17 years where this program could have been developed. We've had 17 years where the community planning elements that are required in the general plan could have been developed. This is just, you know, a complete misstep on the part of the county in terms of getting these things done that you know, that the voter approved general plan called for. So we'll raise this topic again. I just wanted to point that out. I did want to get an opportunity to look again. We had mentioned, so the proposed land use is obviously 336 acres with 1,000 units of dwelling across the different project areas. And to accomplish this, they want to rezone the 99-acre golf course from recreational facility high use. And, you know, and this is the plan that they want to establish. Current land planning on all these parcels right now, you could build 135 units in the El Dorado Hills specific plan, Serrano Village D1, the lots C and D. And then unfortunately for the Pedrigal area, for the people who live over there, there's a lot of development potential over there. That gets you 759 units. Well, you're 250 units short of 1,000 without rezoning the golf course. So to our thinking, you know, well, if you need to rezone part of the golf course and you provide a benefit that the community can support and they can see the, you know, the benefit of, then why can't we just rezone a small portion of the golf course? And I understand it's the cost of development on these property sites, but you know, if there was someplace in the middle that we could get to where we could support, you know, something that would provide the benefit of El Dorado Hills, we just don't see it. So I wanted to include that. That was my perspective there tonight.
John, can I go back to that slide though? When
Yeah.
I went through and I started looking at the zoning ordinances and comparing what's in the plan and the specific plan, that is inaccurate. They cannot build 759 homes.
Yeah, I think it's like 200 and something in the Pedrigal site, but this is, I can't find those documents anymore. You know,
Yeah.
these are documents from the 90s that don't exist.
I found them.
Oh, well, please do share. I will.
So
I'll
yeah, I'm gonna circulate them to everybody.
Okay.
But that's what's really disturbing is they keep, you know, threatening that you know, they could go ahead and build all of these homes, but in reality they can't. And the number is a lot low. It's closer to maybe 300 to 350 homes tops. the reason why they need to rezone the open space is because they have to change all of the zoning in order to build what they want to build. It's a bait and switch. It's frustrating, you know, because what I don't want to, it's really hard to go into the weeds, but
Yeah.
Honestly, what's frustrating the most is that we can't trust the documentation that's in front of us to be accurate. And and when you start relying upon it, and I would ask, you know, people that are on the line, it would really help if people would help and go into the weeds on this and look at the details, because the things that I have looked at, they are completely inaccurate. And we're basing our analysis on these inaccuracies.
Yeah, and we're still finding that there's not enough cumulative benefit to the community. I mean, the long and the short of this is that these are new things we talked about tonight. We wanted to get public feedback. I have two people that we've asked to participate because they provided some good public comments to the Planning Commission, both John Burns and Melinda Peak. And I know you guys are you still, I'm looking for you in my list. Do I still see?
No, it's not necessary.
I'm here.
I don't. Let's see, I'm looking in my list. I'm trying to find them in my list. Sorry. Melinda was in earlier, so was John.
Yeah.
There's John. I'm gonna ask John to talk. And Melinda, you're available to talk. So you both, if there's something you want me to put on the screen, let me know. But you guys had some very pointed comments in the past and recently about the plan areas and sort of the impacts of the seeps, the springs, and sort of the natural resources. So if we could wrap this into something, and if you need something on the screen, tell me, we'll do it.
Yeah, well, I guess I'll start. In general, there's so many things wrong with the FE final environmental impact report that I think we're way ahead of ourselves by getting into the agreement. There's studies that are out of date that nobody should be accepting. You were saying about talking about we can't trust what's the written word. You can't trust it. There's things that are, the Corps of Engineers, for example, is just accepting and giving them, delineations when they should be holding back on it. And so we're way ahead of schedule. And I've really appreciated this meeting because I've learned a lot. But there are certain things, for example, the whole hill of Pedregal is springs. We also learned that the golf course is, all those ponds are the result of piped springs. Springs are not something you're supposed to be planning houses on top of anywhere. Who's going to insure it? Who's going to be responsible for it? What if the roads fail? Are we, the taxpayers, are then going to pay for all the filling of the roads? I mean, there's so many issues like that. There's problems with the cultural, there's problems with Native American consultation, there's problems in biology, and there's errors of fact. I mean, there's little basic things in the environmental document, which they have had 2 years to revise, that are just, bad. And so again, I think we need to put the brakes on in a lot of ways. This big rush to get everything done, that's not an acceptable document. The EIR is not acceptable the way it is. It's got stupid things like the American River is 5 miles southeast of the project, and just minor stuff. But when you add it all up and you find error after error after error going page by page, that's my point, is that it really needs to be slowed down, looked at. And how are you going to build houses on top of springs? That's the most irresponsible thing you can be thinking of. There's been so many people in Ridgeview. The fire station senior center had water damage because of springs. There's so many places that have had water damage. And again, who's going to take the blame for it? Is it the homeowner? Is it the insurer going to provide, homeowners insurance, the realtors? Who's responsible? And I mean, I'm way back a level before you, on all of this, but that's what I've been looking at and find it really pretty frightening to push everything ahead based on faulty information. And I really do think we should stop them with a faulty document. And I was glad, John Richards said that too in his analysis. It's just a bad piece of work. And so again, there's lots of other places to comment, but those are just a few that come to mind. So again, we're writing our letters.
In John, did you want John Burns? Sorry, there's a lot of Johns tonight. John, is there anything you wanted to add? Because you did send in those letters And I know that the two of you have looked at this rather exhaustively and you have concerns. Is there anything you'd like to add to that conversation?
I think a lot of what I discussed in the letters has been further amplified tonight. I appreciated the opportunity to hear what everyone had to say, and I'm delighted that people are paying close attention to this monstrously bad project and asking that the right things happen. The lack of transparency. What's interesting to me is that if you go on the El Dorado County website, right up on top, it touts how transparent they want government to be, how transparent they want the actions of government to be. And this ridiculous collection of documents is anything but transparent. They're confusing. They have the wrong dates on them. You can't find exhibits. They trade off one thing from another. It's virtually impossible to analyze these materials. And as Brooke said, trust them. And what's more, they want to ram this through in short order, even using all of these inadequate and dated studies, documents you can't find. This isn't transparency. This is the opposite of transparency. And the board of supervisors, if they really want transparency in El Dorado County, shouldn't even consider this thing until it's fixed up. What do I mean by fixed up? I'm probably going to oppose it no matter what, but at least present us with documents that make sense, with documents that you can find, with documents that are consistent, and with policy positions that are consistent. There's one key area that I think I would like to address, and that's the taxpayer impact. Section 3.9 of the development agreement admits that there is a net negative fiscal impact upon the county general fund and county road fund. It says it right there. And then it goes on to propose something I don't understand at all, a bunch of what I consider to be gobbledygook, where the developer and the county somehow will get together. I guess this is just staff and the planning director. There seems to be no public input into any of this, and somehow concoct some deal whereby these negative fiscal impacts will be mitigated. But if there's no agreement, there's no indication of what happens next. There's no enforcement. What happens 10, 15 years down the line when Parker hightails it to the Caymans and left the taxpayers holding the bag for all of the road problems, for all of the problems with building on springs, for the lack of recreational opportunities. And once this property is rezoned, that recreational opportunity in an area that has too few now goes away, whether it's golf or sports fields or aquatic center or whatever. This is a bad, bad project as it's currently constituted. It needs substantial revision if it's to be a project at all. And I hope that everyone that's listening at this meeting tonight will do, probably a lot of you have, do what I did. Just go through this and pick out parts, and just collectively, if we all focus on some things, ultimately there might be a whole. 98% of the people in this community, I think it's 98%, not 91%, hate this project. And yet the general plan is supposed to take into account the impact on individual communities within El Dorado County. You can't get that kind of vote for anything, and yet it's been consistent all the way along. You look at the amount of comments set in, who's in favor, who's against. This thing should not move forward, and I think all the commentary tonight moves in that direction. So that's, I guess I'm a taxpayer, I'm a resident. I don't want to see my community destroyed, and as a taxpayer, I don't want to be hosed, and that's what this does. Thank you.
Thank you, John, and thank you, Melinda, both. I advise everybody you can go ahead and look at their public comments on there. I wanted to go ahead. We have one hand up in the audience. We're over time already, but let's go ahead. Mike, go ahead and talk. There we go. You should be ready to go.
Yep, I'm ready.
Okay.
First of all, I'd like to thank you for your efforts. We appreciate that. There's one component that no one's mentioned so far, and that's the issue of the Serrano HOA, and that this plan violates the Serrano CCNRs, which means it's an illegal act, and the county seems to have no problem with that. We had an attorney write the county, the commissioners and the planning department a letter outlining specifics in that issue. And I'd be happy to send a copy of that to anyone who has an interest.
You know, I have seen that letter. I know it's posted in a lot of places in social media. And it is a question that I think we'll probably be including in our comments, because it's sort of it's outside of the development aspect that APAC, you know, we're always looking at the plans, but it is another question the community has asked. And I think it's appropriate to ask, right? And let's get an answer, yes or no. And then if, you know, there are members of that HOA and those CCNR participants that don't like it, then, you know, obviously they have standing to take an action that they want to take. So, but I think it is a valid question. You know, let's have a good answer. And thanks for asking it tonight. I appreciate it. Let's see, do I have another hand up? I'm losing my mind. No, okay, they're down. So I wanted to share two things before we wrap up tonight, and I do mean wrap up. So Alistair Dunn, who's a community member, a former land developer, he had some comments, and he's been working with our subcommittee. He had a presentation that he's provided to us several times, and he had some very focused comments at our last meeting. He's traveling tonight. He's in Bend, Oregon, and his schedule got changed tonight. And he did send an email to me, and it's lengthy, but I did want to say he wanted me to mention the comments he would have had tonight would have included that the zoning consistent alternative, which includes the golf course dedicated to recreation, a Pedregal with a unit count of an approved tentative map of 200 units had expired. And this is the one that Brooke was addressing earlier, because it was infeasible is what he said. And he looked at it as a developer. They couldn't make it happen. And the single family lots in the Serrano portion of the property, he says the zoning does not give the developer ministerial action, but it's a discretionary permit, which is really, he's thinking that the zoning consistent alternative is the way we should be looking at this. It should go through the planning commission in that fashion. He said the planning commission should send it back with the proviso that you should be looking at the current zoning option. That was Alistair's the synopsis of his comments, and he wanted me to share that tonight. And I appreciate, he was trying like crazy to be available, and it's difficult when you travel, and I appreciate that. I'm also going to throw in something I might regret throwing in. So I have an email this afternoon at 3:41 p.m. from the county auditor. And he had suggested to me, he said, yeah, here's an email that I sent to the CAO about the development agreement. It sounds like APAC might be discussing this matter tonight. And it's very pointed. It's, you know, it does support a lot of the things that APAC has been asking. He says he's read the DA quickly. He said it's very long, it's upbeat and flowery. He believes that this is the longest recitals ever in a development agreement. Appears to be a bunch of spin. And then he asked what's the difference between some specific exhibits in the development agreement. And then he even goes on to state the project includes design and construction of a key element to the county's transportation plan, which would be the installation of the segment of Country Club Drive from Silver Valley Parkway to Serrano Parkway. He doesn't see that in the development agreement. It is there now. The development agreement appears to state that phase 2 of the road improvement does not need to be done if the county doesn't get wetlands permit. Obtaining a wetlands permit should be a developer responsibility, and under many scenarios, the road project will never be completed. If it is completed, there's no public benefit if it's never completed. Then he's specifically talked about the pedestrian overcrossing, and he just observed that under many scenarios that the overcrossing will never be completed, depending on, you know, how the project goes forward and how grants are awarded and different projects in the county come to fruition. If it's never completed, there's no public benefit. And that was the entire comment that he provided to the CAO and to county council. And while I appreciate that, and many of those sentiments align with the findings of APAC, my concern is that the auditor had an opportunity to participate in this debate, whether he got elements in the development agreement he wanted or not. He has a rather specific focus in our county as unique to our county, out of many counties in El Dorado County, in California, that he's elected as a county auditor. A lot of county auditors it's an appointed position. I deeply regret that he would not participate in this review, whether he agreed with elements of it or not. I think it's a disservice to the public. And really regret that he went public with a press release talking about why he didn't do it instead of just doing it. It is hyper political, and this whole darn thing is so political right now that I can't stand it. And it's frustrating as a community member. We just want to provide our impact, our input, and have things reviewed and have the community heard. I have no interest in the political aspect of this. I welcome the auditor to participate with this. I'd love if he could be here for this meeting. So there you go. I'm going to leave it at that. So it was just very frustrating for me. So those are my two public comments that came into me today. I wanted to provide them because I said that I would. And then you got some commentary from me as well. So I'm going to jump ahead here. We need to wrap this up tonight. I would ask APAC voting members, is there a motion we want to entertain tonight in terms of, I'll suggest that if somebody wants to modify it, I would like to suggest that we take our subcommittee findings as they exist right now. So subcommittee supports the previous findings, and that we modify our findings and include the elements that we're concerned about, which we will detail in a long letter, and make those the public comments from APAC in terms of the next planning commission meeting. So if somebody would like to make that motion or second it, I'd love to hear it.
I'll second that motion, John.
All right. Well then, where's my long list of APAC members? There's only like a dozen of us. So, and I'm not looking at my participant list. Let's see. So I'll start. Well, John, you spoke up. Is that a yes or a no?
That's a yes.
And I think Ellison was on earlier. I didn't see Ellison. I don't know if he's still on. Okay, I don't see Ellison. Brooke, is that a yes or a no from you?
Yes.
Okay. Joel, are you still on?
Yes, on both counts.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Joel. Who else is here tonight? I'm trying to look through my list. Nancy, which we haven't heard from you tonight at all.
I'm here. I'm listening.
All right. Well,
Yes.
I want to incorporate your previous findings as well and reinforce them. So, are you a yes or no?
Yes, I'm a yes.
Okay. I'm just looking through the list. Sorry, gang. Let's see. I don't see anybody else on there. Tim's on there, but here's the thing. I'm going to vote yes. So there we go. Tim is on the El Dorado Hills Fire Board, and they have a potential conflict because part of this property has been suggested, the limited commercial property on the north side of the fire department, potentially could be landing at the fire board's feet. And I don't want to put Tim in any position where he has a conflict of interest in terms of voting, but Tim has been an active participant in our review. So Tim, out of respect to your position, we don't want to endanger your position on that board in terms of how you decide matters. I'm sure that you would like to abstain from the vote tonight.
That is correct. I abstain.
Okay. Well, with that, we'll go ahead. We have a couple weeks to finish up our public comments and document everything, and we'll submit them. I want to thank the community members for being involved tonight. Again, the CSD is hosting a meeting on the 19th that you can be involved in. There's still plenty of time to provide written comments. And again, I just want to remind everyone, and I said this in my public comments to the Planning Commission on the 28th, there aren't villains or heroes here. It's not a matter of, a good guy or a bad guy, somebody wearing a cape or a black hat. We just disagree in terms of what's being offered here. We think there should be more in order to award these entitlements. So be respectful of your comments, base them in fact, and it's important. So go ahead and participate. I want to remind everybody else too that that to become a voting member of APAC, all you have to do is volunteer to work on a project review, a subcommittee, and then we'll help you with how we do it. We didn't know how to do it when we started. We probably still don't know how to do it. There are probably people in the public that have a better idea of how to approach this, and we would love to hear how we can make this better. So,
Hey, John, can I just interject real quick?
Sure.
For those who would like to add additional, because it sounds like we're going to revise some of the APAC comments and go into detail. Can you kind of set a date certain that we would want those comments, and then maybe with the subcommittee possibly entertain the idea of a virtual meeting where people could add some more?
I like that. I think I talked to Tim earlier today. We had talked about that as well, and I probably just glossed over that. I'm looking at the calendar here for May, realizing we have a holiday at the end of the month and the Planning Commission meeting is on the 9th. You know, oh man, let's try to have those, what do you say, May 20th, which is a Friday, to get our comments finalized, and then perhaps have a May 25th, which is a Wednesday, and it's prior to the holiday. We'll do a half-hour or 20-minute member meeting. We'll make it open to the public as well, but we'll just solidify our comments and vote to approve or reject them. So does that sound feasible? Is there alternatives?
Can we maybe pose it to those participating and say somebody that can't make that timeline, can they raise their hand?
Yeah, if May 20th is a problem for finalizing, and we'll circulate the comments among the subcommittee members.
Yeah, so we're saying that May 20th to have comments that would be circulated among APAC members. Is that
Yeah.
the intention? Yeah, I will do my best.
Well, your best is probably better than mine, so I appreciate that. And then is the 25th an appropriate date to get together? And we'll agendize the meeting and make it public. We'll just make it super short.
I think so.
Okay, not hearing any other objection. Subject to, you know, participation opportunities for other members, we'll set that as our goal, the 20th for writing the comments and the 25th for reviewing it, and we'll submit them prior to the holiday. And that way the planning commission has a good couple weeks to look at.
Can I just ask one other question? I know there are some really great comments made, especially about the CEQA and the streams, and those individuals who made those comments, would they be able to provide that information to APAC?
They are in the public comments right now. I was going to check with Melinda and John to see if they were opposed to having us posting them on the website and making them part of our public comments. So we'll follow up with them and see if that's possible.
Yeah, if you want to make anything I said part of the APAC, that's fine with me.
Okay, I appreciate that, John. All right, now did I miss anything? It's a long meeting, guys. Sorry.
Good meeting.
Okay. Well,
I think it's worth it. It's a big project.
Yeah, and, you know, we were stressed about the time, so I'm grateful the planning commission extended it. So again, I remind people, if you want to make public comments at APAC, obviously opportunity is there for you before our meetings. If it's not on the agenda, if it's a matter on the agenda, when we get to it on the agenda, you obviously everyone's welcome to make comments. But if you have if you want to submit comments in advance for our meetings, if you do it the Monday before and let us know what your topic's related to via email to edhapac.comment@gmail.com. If we get them by 5 p.m. on Monday, we'll incorporate them into the meetings. So our next meeting is Wednesday, June 28th. I technically have the fire station reserved. I don't know what topics we're going to have by then because this is sort of all consuming. So, but we'll have an agenda published prior to that. So if there are any go backs, anybody have anything we missed? Awesome. Well, then I want to go ahead and thank everyone for participating tonight. This is a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff. So the participation is so valuable for our community. I appreciate everyone being involved, and we look forward to talking with everyone again very soon. So let's adjourn our meeting.